A white moon covered in snow and ice. A monochrome landscape. The dark trunks of trees standing in contrast to the eye-piercing brightness of the snow under the cold rays of the sun. Then, suddenly, a sound. A wheezing sound, rising and falling, and a shape flickered into view. The sound of materialization stopped, and all was quiet again, save for the soft rustle of snow dropping from overloaded branches. The TARDIS door opened, and the Doctor stepped out.
Wow! Are you ready?
Yes,
said Yaz, joining her friend. Both of them were warmly dressed and wearing hats, scarves, and dark glasses.
Good thing we found these ski glasses. Don't want to risk your eyes in this light. Besides, you'd miss the view.
Yaz didn't reply directly. Instead, she looked around her. The TARDIS had landed on the edge of a snowy wood. The blackened trunks and branches of deciduous trees mingled with the occasional conifer, the dark green needles powdering the surface of the snow with green. Yaz sighed, and her breath made a cloud in the cold air.
it's beautiful.
It is.
The Doctor replied, looking around with a satisfaction that suggested she had been somehow responsible for the landscape.
Where are we again?
Frimaire, the winter moon. Uninhabited, at least by humans. For now, anyway. I wasn't aiming for it, but we might as well have a look while we're here.
Winter moon. Is it always winter here then?
Always winter and never Christmas?
The Doctor quoted.
Yeah, at least it has been for a while now.
How long?
Yaz asked, aware that, for the Doctor, a while could mean anything from a couple of weeks to several centuries. The Doctor frowned.
At least 800 years. Earth years, at least. Years take a bit longer in these parts. Frimaire used to have seasons just like Earth. But then it slipped out of its natural orbit and spent longer and longer away from the sun, and gradually winter got longer and longer, and other seasons got shorter. That's why there are no humanoids here anymore. Records show there were some, but they evacuated because of the change of seasons.
Right.
Said Yaz, shivering despite her warm coat and gloves.
What? Why did the orbit change?
According to the records, someone, or a small group of someones, decided to try to increase the growing season to harvest more crops. But whatever they did, it went wrong. And Frimaire has been in this orbit ever since. I don't know why they tried it exactly. The information in the TARDIS database is sketchy. It's not your fault, is it, old girl? Let's go have a look around. Evening comes early here. We should make the most of the sunshine.
She walked off away from the tree line, and Yaz followed, flapping her arms to keep warm. The Doctor smiled.
That's the good thing about walking in the snow,
she said as her boots crunched along.
We'll soon get warmed up.
Yeah.
Said Yaz, breathless already. The Doctor bent down and scooped up a handful of snow, then turned suddenly and threw it at Yaz.
Gotcha!
She shouted, her voice echoing in the empty air. Yaz shouted,
You!
and gathered her own snowball, but the Doctor was running, as well as she could through the snow, and Yaz had to chase her to deliver her revenge. The Doctor retaliated, and for a few minutes the companions chased each other round and round, shouting and laughing, before collapsing together onto a snowy bank by a frozen stream.
Warmer now, Yaz?
The Doctor asked between giggles.
Yeah.
Yaz replied, smiling.
Thought so. Nothing like a good snowball fight.
The Doctor sat up, then stood and heaved Yaz to her feet.
Come on, let's follow the stream for a bit.
She held out her hand and Yaz took it, and they walked on, still laughing occasionally, until the Doctor stopped and Yaz looked up and said,
Wow.
They were looking at a waterfall. A sheer cliff rose up in front of them, dark against the snow, its craggy surface specked with whiteness. The waterfall stretched from the top of the cliff to the stream below, a frozen explosion of icicles. The light glistened on and through it. It sparkled and glittered like a fairy palace of ice. Yaz didn't want to speak. She didn't want to break the spell that seemed to have fallen on the scene before her. The Doctor looked at her and smiled. They stood together, trying to take it all in. Yaz wanted to imprint the scene on her memory. She doubted she would ever see anything quite like it again. The silence only added to the eerie beauty. No birds were singing. There was no sound of animals or of other people. The only sound was the Doctor and Yaz breathing clouds of vapour into the cold, still air.
It's beautiful,
Yaz said at last, which felt like an inadequate response.
It is.
The doctor said softly. They stood for a few more moments, then Yaz began to be aware of how cold her feet were getting. She stamped them and said,
Should we get going?
We probably should. It'll be dark before long. We don't want to lose our way home.
Yaz shivered, partly from the cold and partly from the thought of being lost in a landscape which was beginning to seem sinister rather than beautiful. She turned away from the waterfall and walked beside the doctor, back along the stream and towards the woods and the TARDIS. Before they reached the site of their snowball fight, Yaz stopped.
Yaz, you okay?
Yeah, I'm just tired. All of a sudden. I don't know where it came from. Must be the cold.
Yes, let's get on. It's the cold. We'll get back soon and have a nice cup of hot chocolate.
She tucked her hand through Yaz's arm and Yaz smiled wearily.
Good idea.
They trudged on for a while in silence until the doctor stopped.
Look.
Ahead of them, Yaz could see a figure. She couldn't see their face. They were wearing what looked like a spacesuit, complete with helmet. As if they had heard the doctor, the figure turned and gestured emphatically.
What's that?
Yaz asked, but the doctor was already on her way towards the figure.
Hello?
She said with her usual cheerfulness.
I'm the doctor, and this is Yaz. Can we help you with anything?
What are you doing here?
The voice from inside the helmet was amplified and seemed to echo.
Just having a look around. We just got here a little while ago and we thought we'd...
She was about to go on, but the voice said,
You shouldn't be here. You need to leave now. This moon is a restricted zone.
Oh, sorry, we didn't know. We're on our way back to our ship in any case, so we'll just get on.
The figure turned, and the doctor could just make out a face behind the tinted visor.
That would be a very good idea.
The person inside the suit said.
The moon is a restricted zone, not because it's endangered, but because it's dangerous. You shouldn't be here without protective clothing, but you are. The best thing you can do is to leave. Now.
Okay.
Said the doctor, unwillingly. She could feel that there was a mystery here, and she wanted to find out more. Yaz pulled at her arm, and she went reluctantly. They had only gone a few steps when their unknown acquaintance called out,
Stop!
Yaz and the doctor stopped and turned back. The person in the suit was running towards them.
Where is your ship?
Back at the woods? Over... Oh...
Yaz looked in the direction of the wood and gasped. The trees had disappeared. A heavy cloud had descended, blotting out the view. She felt a sudden chill as the wind began to whistle around them, catching at her scarf.
That's a blizzard. You'll never get through it. It's coming this way and it's getting worse. I've been tracking it. By the time it reaches us, it'll be at storm force. If your ship is on the other side of that, you...
They paused, then turned abruptly and said,
Come with me.
When the TARDIS crew hesitated, the stranger turned back.
Come on. Come with me now or take your chances in that.
They flung out their arm and Yaz could see how close the clouds were. The wind was howling now, stinging her eyes, even with the glasses, and she could see the flakes spinning and dancing towards them.
Yes! Thanks! We'll come with you!
The stranger said nothing more, but turned again and led the way at a brisk pace. The doctor and Yaz followed, trying to keep pace, clinging to each other as the storm reached them and the wind buffeted them, pushing them back one moment, driving them forward the next. The snowflakes whirled in, shrinking the landscape, making it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Yaz felt herself becoming more and more dizzy and disorientated. She was glad when the stranger stopped and shouted,
In here, come on.
Yaz couldn't see the building at first. It was low and covered in snow, but she could just make out a glow from a shuttered window, and she saw the stranger pushing open a door and beckoning them.
Come on! Almost there!
Yaz set her teeth and forced her tired feet forwards. The next moment she was inside and felt herself falling forwards. A pair of hands caught her and pushed her back into a chair.
Got you again!
Where are we?
You're in the temporary base of the Frimaire survey team.
They had removed their helmet, and Yaz and the doctor could hear their voice more clearly. The stranger was a woman. She was tall and appeared to be slim, as far as Yaz could tell. The skin of her face was blue-green, and her hair, which sprang out as she removed the cap she'd been wearing under the helmet, was wavy and an iridescent magenta colour.
My name is Lux, survey leader. And if either of you has any sense, you'll do exactly what I say. Stay there.
She left the room, and the Doctor and Yaz stayed where they were, partly from surprise at being ordered about. The room was small, with a low ceiling and dark-coloured walls and floor. Yaz wondered if it was an entrance hall. She couldn't see much in the way of furniture, but she could see a table with helmets lined up on it, which presumably belonged to Lux's team, wherever they were. She hadn't time to think any further, because Lux reappeared, carrying a bundle which turned out to be 2 suits identical to the one she was wearing.
Take off your outer layers and put these on,
She said with the same brusqueness she had shown outside. As Yaz hesitated, she said,
quickly. Your life may depend on it.
The Doctor took off her coat and scarf and pulled the suit on over her trousers and jumper.
Why? I know it's obvious to you, but we're nowhere. Why do we need these?
Lux looked at the Doctor. She seemed, to Yaz, to be deciding how much to tell them.
Put them on, and I'll explain. You can't mess around on this moon.
Okay.
Said Yaz, fastening the suit, which was made from an unfamiliar fabric. It felt soft inside, like brushed cotton. The outside was quilted in horizontal layers, and it fastened closely around the wrists and neck.
Ready? Now, what's happening here?
Lux sighed.
Come with me. Let's be comfortable at least.
This room was larger than the other and showed more signs of habitation. Tables held scientific instruments and kit bags were piled in a corner. That wasn't all, Yaz realised. 3 other people were in the room, stretched out on camp beds. They were all wearing suits, and they were all asleep, or, at any rate, they seemed to be asleep. Lux pulled a stool out from under the table and gestured to the Doctor and Yaz to sit down, which they did. She sighed again and ran her hand through her hair.
Don't take this the wrong way, but you are really the last thing I need right now.
We're very grateful, and we'll be out of your way the moment the storm drops.
You might, if you're lucky.
Yaz felt a sudden chill down her spine. What on earth? No, not on earth. What was going on?
You're going to have to be a little less mysterious, Lux.
Lux looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. She was silent for a moment, then seemed to make up her mind.
Very well. What do you know about Frimaire?
It was moved out of its original orbit some time ago, by a project designed to improve harvests.
Yes, the project misfired. I mean that, literally. The project required huge amounts of energy to be released at specific points on Frimaire. When it was executed, some of them failed. That caused it to slip out of one orbit and into another, and caused the change in the climate. But that wasn't all it did.
Yaz yawned. Coming from the cold outside into the warm was making her drowsy. The suit was snug and warm, almost like wearing a sleeping bag. She blinked, then sat up straight. A strange buzzing sensation had passed around her neck. Lux looked at her, then sprang from her seat. She picked up a device on the table and held it towards Yaz for a moment, then looked at the small screen mounted in the top.
You're all right, for now. But you must stay awake.
You think I might have hypothermia?
No. You want to know about the suits? The suits are insulated. They keep you warm and they are water resistant. They also keep you conscious. When Frimaire slipped out of orbit, it wasn't just the weather that was affected. The animals were first. They seemed to be hibernating, the people thought, which made sense, I suppose. But then the people started to be affected. They thought it was the cold at first. It is tiring after all. But it wasn't. Something was making them tired. Not just tired, exhausted. They began to fall asleep, and the longer they slept, the harder it was to wake them up. Eventually, after investigating, the area government evacuated the entire population. They called it under-rotation sickness. They think that the changed orbit and the shift on the axis has caused Frimaire to rotate at a different speed.
The Doctor looked at Lux, and she shrugged.
I don't know if that's true, but I know the condition exists. That's why we have the suits, and that's why we're not supposed to be down here for long, and that's why you should leave as soon as you can. If you start to feel tired, the suit should keep you conscious, but it only delays the onset, doesn't prevent it.
And if we do fall asleep?
Yaz almost didn't want to ask, but she had to know.
You might be lucky if you can be evacuated quickly enough. Some of the people who were unconscious when they left recovered, but not immediately. Some of them slept for months, some of them for years, and if they had stayed here...
The doctor glanced at the other members of the team.
How long have you been here, Lux?
Too long. We should have left days ago, but the storms were too bad for them to land. Then there was a delay. I don't know why, a parts failure, they said. I wasn't just tracking the storm, I was trying to get a signal to contact headquarters. Then this storm hit and you came along. I'm not blaming you, but you understand now. You really are the last thing I need.
How long does it take?
Yaz asked, somewhat obliquely, but Lux understood.
It depends. With a suit and no underlying issues, it could be a few days before symptoms start to show. Without a suit, it could be hours. But you look healthy, both of you. And if we're lucky, the storm won't last and you can get back to your ship.
Yaz looked at the sleepers. They had the same blue-green skin as Lux, but their hair colour varied, although they all showed the same iridescence as their teammate. Lux followed her gaze.
Kuik was the first. He went at the end of the third day. We had to rest. We couldn't do without sleep completely. But we couldn't wake him when it was his turn to watch. Knox went the next day, then died. I tried to wake them every few hours. I checked their signs and I...
She stopped and put her face in her hands.
Sorry. This has nothing to do with you. Every time I check, they seem to have sunk further down, and now this storm. I don't know if we'll get out here at all. Never mind when.
The doctor got up and put her hand on Lux's shoulder.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We'll help you if we can.
Thank you, but I don't see how you can. We're stuck here until the storm has passed. And then we need to tell headquarters where we are.
We could take you with us. In our ship. When the storm is over. We can go there together.
She yawned and rubbed her eyes. The collar of her suit buzzed again, but the signal didn't feel as strong as the last time.
Oh, stay awake. I must stay awake.
The doctor had begun to walk around the room.
What is this place?
I don't know. Which sounds ridiculous, but it's been hundreds of years since Frimaire was evacuated. Any maps from the time are either lost or hopelessly inaccurate. It was just in the right place at the right time for us. It's big, secure, and weathertight, and that's all we wanted.
Right. How much of this did you bring with you?
Said the doctor, almost to herself.
How much? Oh, the kit. We bought our survey kit, transmitters in the suit and some food in case of emergency.
Lux smiled bitterly again.
But the rest of it was here. Why?
I was just thinking.
The doctor said, then stopped and looked at an open laptop.
Is that what you track the storms on?
Yes. Since the restricted area designation came in, there's been more satellite coverage. Look, that's where we are, right under the centre of it. It moved quickly at first, but now it's slowing down. And look there, there's a second wave coming in. We could be here for days.
Yaz watched the doctor and Lux. She couldn't really hear what they were saying. A strange, soft humming sound seemed to fill her ears. She blinked and rubbed her eyes again. The doctor looked fuzzy, she thought. She nodded forwards, then sat up again. She tried to call out, but no sound came. Then, slowly, Yaz felt a sense of calm creep over her. She was tired, that was all. She had got too cold, and now she was tired. Nothing to worry about. She just needed to rest. It couldn't be the thing that Lux had talked about. They hadn't been there long enough, surely. The humming became a gentle, regular sound, the sound of her pulse. It seemed to be getting slower. She was so tired. It wouldn't hurt, surely, just to close her eyes. She breathed in, deeply, and out again. The suit collar buzzed and so did the wrists, but she hardly felt it. She glanced over at Kuik, Knox, and Dietz. They were fuzzy too now. They looked comfortable lying down like that. The suit buzzed again, but this time Yaz didn't feel it at all. She saw the doctor and Lux looking at her. The doctor said something, but Yaz couldn't hear what it was. The pulsing in her ears had got too loud. She tried to speak, but she was too tired to open her mouth. If only she could lie down just for a while. That would be so nice. She was so warm and so tired. Yaz fell forwards off the stool and into the doctor's arms.
Yaz?
The doctor caught her friend and shook her.
Yaz, wake up!
Yaz's eyelids flickered, then closed again. The doctor tried again.
Yaz?
She's already under.
Lux said wearily. She held a device next to Yaz's neck, then looked at the screen.
You won't be able to wake her until you can get her off this moon. Look.
She held the device out to the doctor.
That's the previous reading, and that's now. Her pulse rate has dropped and her breathing has gone 3 points down already. Her body temperature will be regulated. The suit will see to that. There's no risk of hypothermia. But she won't wake up.
Lux spoke with a finality that annoyed the doctor.
There must be something.
The doctor said, laying Yaz gently on the ground, then standing up.
You've got the suits. There must be something else. Surely you don't leave people.
Ideally, we wouldn't be in this position.
Lux began, but the doctor was rummaging among the equipment on the tables.
Hey! Leave that alone. That's nothing to do with you.
The doctor turned, slowly. She had a box in her hand. The box was transparent and full of empty syringes.
There was something, wasn't there? What was it? A stimulant?
I don't know what you mean.
Yes, you do.
The doctor said, quietly.
I'm not judging you, Lux. Someone had to stay awake, didn't they? You had these. Quite a lot of them by the looks of it. An extra boost? For emergencies? Or to bring someone back before they got too far down? But when the others started to go under, you decided to keep them for yourself, didn't you? Rather than trying to bring your teammates around. That's it, isn't it?
Lux hesitated, then collapsed onto a stool.
Yes, you're right. There was something. I had to decide. Were we going to share or was I going to stay awake? So I chose. I chose not to try and wake them up. I didn't know how long it would be before we were relieved. I had to.
She spoke the last words angrily and looked at the doctor.
It wasn't really a choice. You see that, don't you?
I do. How much is left?
The doctor replied, and Lux seemed to calm down.
None. I took the last dose this morning before I went out.
Lux replied, looking her straight in the eye.
I see.
The doctor looked past Lux to the pile of kit bags. She could just see a rectangular shape poking out of the top of the bag. She sighed and went back over to Yaz. The doctor crouched down by Yaz and put the back of her hand on her forehead.
She's a bit warm.
That will settle down.
Lux said without looking at her.
It's the reaction to coming in here from outside.
Is it?
The doctor said, then, apparently, changing the subject.
These suits are brilliant. I've never seen anything like them before. Is the insulation just from the fabric, or is there some kind of heat control?
There's built-in heating. The control panel's on the right sleeve, you...
She stopped, suddenly aware of what she had just said.
Yes. You didn't tell us that, did you?
You didn't need to know.
Lux was defensive again. The doctor undid the flap on Yaz's right sleeve and looked at the panel inside. She pressed a button and a beep came from the panel.
She's a bit warm.
The doctor opened the panel on her own sleeve. Lux looked at her like a cornered animal. She seemed to shrink in on herself.
And so am I. I wonder how that happened. Can you tell me, Lex? How did both these suits come to have their temperature set so high?
The doctor held Lux's gaze, calmly, and Lux looked away.
You wanted us to fall asleep, didn't you? So you made sure we were warm.
Why did you come here? Why? It was bad enough without you, but I had enough food and enough...
You've had enough drugs.
The doctor said. It wasn't a question.
You've had enough food and drugs to last till you were rescued, so you thought you'd send us to sleep. We'd be less of a bother that way, wouldn't we? And what were you going to do when you were rescued? Leave us here?
I don't know.
Lux rounded on the doctor, eyes blazing.
I just know that I don't need 2 mouths to feed. She's asleep.
She pointed to Yaz.
They are asleep. Our mission has failed. I don't need you complicating things any further. So why don't you just go to sleep? Why?
Maybe because my metabolism is different to yours, and different to Yaz's.
She was trying hard not to lose her temper. She was worried about Yaz, but she knew that, under her anger, Lux was afraid.
Now, you're going to sit there, and I'm going to get you some food, and you're going to tell me what this is all about.
Or?
Asked Lux petulantly. The doctor lunged forward and grabbed Lux's right wrist. Lux struggled, but she couldn't break the doctor's grip. The doctor pulled her prisoner over to where she had left her coat and took a sonic screwdriver out of the pocket.
I will short-circuit you, Sue. I mean it, Lux. I don't want to hurt you, but you've hurt my friend. I know you're afraid. I know you've been alone for too long and you want to get away, but I can't help you unless you're honest with me. So sit there and tell me everything.
Lux sat down and the doctor let go of her wrist.
Now, what are we having to eat? Let's see.
She said with a dazzling smile that startled Lux. She rummaged among the food stores and produced a tin.
That looks okay. Have you got a tin opener? Oh, never mind.
Lux watched silently as the doctor applied her sonic to the top of the tin. Then, once the tin was opened, used the sonic to warm the contents. She rummaged some more and found a spoon, then passed the tin and the spoon to Lux.
Get that down, you. You can eat and talk at the same
Lux
time.
prodded the food with the spoon, then began to eat. She didn't look at the doctor. She seemed almost to be talking to herself.
I can't remember how many days we've been here for. When the first storm hit, we lost the connection to the headquarters and the calendars haven't come back. We were given enough food and drugs to last us 2 weeks. We were supposed to dose ourselves every morning and limit the amount of time we slept. We were supposed to sleep in shifts, to watch each other.
What was your mission?
We were supposed to find the equipment that sent Frimaire off course and restart it.
Lux said. She put down the tin and put her head in her hands.
We were chosen for our skills. I was the leader, the time manager, the encourager. Kuik is the circuit man. Nox is the expert on power sources, Diet is communications. The planners had worked out that if we could restart the equipment and fire off the other energy points, there was a good chance that we could shift Frimaire back to its original orbit again.
Why?
Lux stared. This was the last question she had expected.
Because if we don't, Frimaire is forecast to leave the system.
And did you find the equipment?
The doctor asked, although she already knew the answer.
Yes, it's here, in this building. That's why we're here.
So what went wrong?
Lux looked at her sleeping colleagues.
Kuik was the first. He hates needles. I offered to inject it for him, but he said he would do it himself, but not with us watching. We were going to take our doses at the same time every day, together.
He didn't take them.
Again, a statement, not a question.
No. I noticed he was tired. I had to check our readings 3 times a day if possible. I asked him. He promised, he swore he had taken them. I told him he must give me the syringes to show that he was following instructions. And he gave them to me. Then, the next day, Nox found him in the control room asleep on the floor. We got him up here. We tried to wake him. He hadn't taken any of the doses. The injections go in here.
Lux opened the collar of her suit and the doctor saw a row of small red dots along her collarbone.
He had no marks on him. He must have just tipped it away, then given me the syringes back. He can't have drunk it. It's too bitter. We gave him the maximum recovery dose, but it wasn't any use.
And then?
Then Nox went down. She'd been taking her dose, but she'd taken her suit off to work on the cabling. I caught her the day after Kuik. She said it was too awkward, she couldn't get anything done properly with it on. She fell asleep while we were eating that evening.
Lux paused and then said,
And that's when things got really bad. I was ready to evacuate, but the storm came in, and we couldn't get away. Diet was frantic, we both were. He didn't want to abandon the mission. He said it would be a disaster, that we would be arrested, we'd be outcasts. The team that failed to save the planet. He wouldn't listen to reason. I tried to tell him that it was no good, but he wouldn't listen.
So you sent him to sleep?
Said the doctor, quietly.
Yes.
Said Lux. She looked down at her hands, which were clasped together in her lap, then up at the doctor.
You must understand, please. I had to save the team. I couldn't trust him anymore. I swapped his doses for water and I reset his suit when he took it off to wash. I couldn't think what else to do. We had failed. I knew we had. I'd failed. I was supposed to lead the team to make sure everything went.
Lux put her face in her hands and began to cry. Her shoulders heaved as she sobbed.
I didn't know what else to do. I sent him to sleep and tried to get us away, but they didn't come. They won't come. And now we're stuck here. We failed and we're stuck on this wretched rock in the cold and dark, and I can't sleep. I dared sleep and...
Her words were lost in sobs. The doctor walked over to Lux and put her hand on her shoulder.
When did you last sleep?
I can't remember.
Where's the equipment?
In the lower levels.
Lux said, trying to stifle her sobbing.
Level 4. The energy points are spread across the moon. They've been checked. Other teams have checked them. They succeeded. We're the only ones who failed.
The doctor patted Lux's shoulder.
Have you got any schematics?
Yes, there, on the bench near the door.
Lux looked at the doctor with sudden hope in her eyes.
Do you mean you can make it work?
I don't know, but I'm gonna take a look.
The doctor said, honestly. She switched on her sonic and, quick as a flash, she pressed it against the back of Lux's neck. Lux slumped down to the floor. The doctor knelt down and turned her so that she was lying on her side.
I'm sorry, Lux. I want to trust you, but I can't. Not after what you did to Yaz. Besides, you need to sleep.
The doctor hurried to the table. The schematic drawings were half hidden by empty food containers, and the doctor brushed them to the floor impatiently.
Now, let's see what we're up against.
She consulted the plans in silence, apart from the odd exclamation of,
Oh, I get it!
and...
Well, I'll have to change that around.
Finally, she folded the plan and picked up her sonic. A toolbox stood near the door, and the doctor tossed the sonic into the top and picked it up.
Right, I'm off. I'll be back soon, though. Yaz, don't go too far away. I'm coming back for you.
With that, the doctor turned and ran. The corridors were dark, and the doctor was glad that the toolbox had a torch in it. She found a lift, but it wasn't working. Not enough power, she supposed. So she took the stairs down to level 4, treading carefully, but trying to move as quickly as she could. Eventually, she reached the control room. This too was in darkness. The doctor propped her torch on one of the benches and unfolded the plan. She could see what the scientists had been trying to do. It had been risky and, in her opinion, a stupid plan, but she could see how the equipment worked. The question was, if she could activate it, would it put the moon back into its previous orbit or send it even further out? What choice did she have? The storm still raged outside. Yaz was in danger. Lux and her colleagues were too. Their home planet had already suffered the consequences of the failed first attempt. The doctor rubbed her eyes. She must focus. The collar of her suit buzzed and the doctor shook her head. She should have eaten something, but she hadn't thought of it. No time now. She had to get this heap of ancient nonsense working. With her sonic in one hand and her torch in the other, the doctor clambered over the control desk and went to work. As she slept, Yaz dreamed. She was lying on the ground, not in the base or the TARDIS, but outside somewhere. The sky was blue above her, and she could hear birds singing in the trees. Her dream self touched the grass, and she felt the blade slip between her fingers. It was a warm day. She could feel the sun on her face and see the glow of it through her eyelids. Then she seemed to be watching herself from the outside, while feeling the sensations she was witnessing. She saw and felt her hair unravel from its plait and wave out around her. The strands turned downwards and began to push into the earth like the roots of plants in search of moisture. Yaz raised her hand and saw that her fingers had begun to lengthen. She wasn't afraid. She looked at them with curiosity, then put her hand down again and felt her fingers pushing downwards, just as the strands of her hair had done. Her dream eyes followed them as they grew, pushing deeper and deeper, fastening her to the ground. She had grown roots and they had trapped her. Yaz closed her dreaming eyes again. She felt the warmth of the sun and knew that she couldn't move, even if she wanted to. She would stay there, fixed in that place, forever. The doctor applied her sonic to a tangle of cables, then recoiled as sparks showered over her.
Drat! Thought so.
She followed one of the cables to the control desk and pulled it out of the socket.
Let's get this right way around.
The doctor yawned and her suit collar buzzed. This wouldn't do. She was the only one awake now. Perhaps she should have brought Lux with her after all. but no, she was better off doing this herself. The doctor plugged another cable into the socket and the buttons and instrument panels on the control desk lit up.
Good. Let's hope there's enough power in these packets to trigger the reaction.
She looked over to where a stack of power packs had been assembled by Knox and Kewick. She sat down at the control desk and pressed a series of buttons. For a moment, nothing happened. The doctor's eyes began to close and she leaned forward. The suit buzzed once more, just enough to make her sit up again. She shook her head and muttered,
Ugh, don't mess it up now. Come on, Doctor. Hold it together. Let's get this done.
She flicked a switch and a whirring sound filled the room. It got louder and louder, and the doctor got down under the desk and put her hands over her ears. One of the instrument panels exploded, sending sparks and smoke into the air. The doctor wanted to close her eyes, but she didn't dare to. Instead, she whispered a countdown as the noise got louder, and the power packs began to glow. Before she reached one, there was a flash of light and a sound like distant thunder. The doctor waited for a moment and crawled out from under the desk. She looked at the remaining screens on the instrument panels. Had it worked? Was it too early to tell? She yawned again, and as she covered her mouth, she felt the suit buzz at her wrists and neck. Perhaps she should sit down, just for a little while before climbing all those stairs. The doctor put her head down on the control desk and closed her eyes. The thundering sound had reached Yaz, even in her dreams. She opened her sleeping eyes and saw that the imagined sky was dark above her. Suddenly, she was afraid. She tried to sit up, but her hair and her hands were still rooted in the ground. The sound came again, and Yaz closed her eyes and tried to turn her head as drops of rain began to fall on her. She tried to move her arms, first one, then the other, but the roots held firm. The rain got heavier, great soaking drops that stung when they struck her. The dream Yaz cried out and tried to turn her face away. She pulled her arms upward with all her strength and screamed. At that moment, the roots snapped. Her arms were free, and she raised them and put her hands over her face. Her hair returned to its usual length and wound itself back into the plait. Dream Yaz rolled onto her side and curled up. Suddenly, the rain stopped. The air seemed to change, and the sound of the thunder faded. Yaz opened her eyes. She was awake. She sat up slowly and put her hands to her temples. Her mind was still full of the nightmare she had just escaped from. Yaz looked around. She could see Kewick, Knox and Dine, still asleep. Then she saw Lux, lying where the doctor had left her. Yaz crawled over to one of the stools and pulled herself onto it. Where was the doctor? What had happened to Lux? Yaz tried to call out, but her voice cracked. She tottered over to the food stores and found a bottle of what seemed to be water. After a cautious sip, she tried again. No answer came. Yaz leaned against the edge of the table, trying to think. She couldn't remember much from earlier on. She had been so sleepy. Where might the doctor have gone? Outside? The rattle of wind in the shutters disproved that theory. In the building, then. But where? Yaz turned and found herself looking at a sheet of thin paper with the layout of a building drawn on it. A blueprint? No, a floor plan. For this building, it must be. Yaz traced the lines with her finger, looking at the levels. She had no idea that the building was so large. What was this? The fourth level was marked with a cluster of words and symbols. Yaz couldn't understand the words, but one of the symbols was unmistakable, a lightning bolt for electricity. There was a lot going on that level. If the plan was anything to go by, and if electricity was involved, it was a fair bet that the doctor would be there. Yaz looked at the plan again, then left the room as quickly as her cramped limbs would let her. The doctor opened her eyes. She was lying on the grass under a blue sky. How had she got here? Did it matter? The sun was warm and the grass around her was green. A sudden noise made her turn her head. A voice calling her. A familiar voice.
Doctor! Wake up!
The doctor opened her eyes and sat up.
Yaz!
Yes,
Thank you. How did you know I was here?
I didn't.
Yaz admitted, smiling.
But I found a plan and it had loads of symbols on it. And warnings about electricity, and I thought that was a pretty safe bet.
The doctor smiled in return.
You were right.
What is this place?
It's the control room. This is where they tried to move Frimaire first time round. Lux and the others were here trying to move it back again.
But they didn't.
No, they didn't. But I think...
You did. Is that why I woke up?
Maybe. I'd have to check the instruments upstairs. These ones aren't good for much of anything anymore now.
She helped the doctor up and the two friends supported each other back to ground level. When they reached the room where Lux had made her headquarters, the doctor consulted one of the screens. She tapped at the keyboard, frowning, and then said,
Yes!
You did it?
Yes, the moon is moving. I mean, it always was, but it's shifted again. It's back on its original axis.
Why didn't we feel it? I mean, if the world shifted on its axis, I'm sure we'd notice.
I'm glad we didn't. There might have been an earthquake, or it might have stopped completely and we'd be floating off into space.
Well, thanks. That makes me feel a lot better. I think the storm is stopping.
Yes. We'll have to take care in the snow, but it looks like we've only got a couple of hours to it.
She bustled over to the food stores.
Let's see if we can get a snack.
What about Lux and the others?
Yaz asked. She was still shaken after her ordeal, and she didn't think they should abandon their new acquaintance.
I hope they'll be okay once they get off this moon.
The doctor said, turning round with a packet of what looked like yellow biscuits in one hand.
They've been under for longer though, so it might take them a while to recover.
And Lux? She was still awake when I...
Yes, that's a different story.
Yaz looked at her, but she didn't explain. Instead, she knelt down by Lux and put her sonic on her neck, just inside the collar of her suit. The sonic whirred and Lux blinked, then opened her eyes.
Hello! You're back again! The storm's nearly over and we'll be on our way soon, but it seemed rude to leave without saying goodbye.
Lux tried to sit up and the doctor put her arm around her and said,
Slowly does it, that's it.
I remember you were next to me. Then I felt something on my neck. Then I don't remember anything after that.
Oh, I just helped you have a bit of rest. No, I'm done.
But did you? What happened to the...
Lux struggled to her feet and tottered over to the table. She looked at the screens in silence, then gave a gasp that was nearly a sob.
You did it! Doctor, you did it!
Looks like it, but you'll need to keep an eye on it. Sorry, that's a daft thing to say. It's a moon, you're not exactly going to miss it, are you?
Lux didn't understand, but she didn't care. She turned back to the screens and whispered,
It's done. We failed, but you didn't.
I couldn't have done it without your team. They did all the hard work. I just pressed a few buttons. Now,
she put her hand on Lux's shoulder.
The storm is easing up, and Yaz and I are going to be on our way soon. Why don't you start calling your headquarters again and tell them the good news? It'll show up on their satellites, won't it? You want to tell them all about it and get your rides home sorted out.
Once again, Lux didn't really understand what the doctor was saying, but she grasped the main point. She should tell headquarters, and quickly. She picked up a radio receiver, then stopped.
What do I tell them about the rest of it?
That's up to you.
The doctor said, quietly.
Think about it carefully. And while you're doing that, Yaz and I will go in the other room and wait, won't we?
Yaz knew this wasn't really a question.
Yes. We'll give you some privacy.
Thank you. Do you want to take any food with you when you go?
I've already raided your biscuits, but if you've got any water, that'd be great.
Lux passed over a bottle, and the doctor and Yaz left the room together. 2 hours had passed and the storm had abated. The doctor and Yaz were trudging through the snow, leaning on long sticks provided by Lux. The doctor had accepted with thanks, and the travellers had set off. When the TARDIS came into sight, the doctor paused.
Looks nice, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
They walked on, and Yaz said,
What did Lux mean about telling them about the rest of it?
The doctor looked at her friend.
I'll tell you about it. But not until we're indoors. Remember, I promised you a hot chocolate. I'm not going to have you thinking I don't keep my promises.
Yaz laughed, and the two companions walked on towards the TARDIS, hot drinks and home comforts. A Who Corner to Corner podcast production. If Winter Comes, written by Lucy McCaul, starring Katie Haynes as the Doctor, Emily Beach as Yaz, Elodie Davies as Lux. Audio production by Geoff Cockwill. New Doctor Who podcasts released every Sunday at 6 p.m. on whoc2c.buzzsprout.com.